I can only see 4 people.
Right. Right, we're live now. Right. Welcome anyone sitting at home watching. Welcome everyone who's here in the meeting. Should we do a quick round of introductions? Joe, you first. You're on the top left for me.
Joe Gallard, Clark's Town Council.
Great, thank you. I'm Tom Whip. I'm the chairman of the Town Council. Next we've got Callum.
Callum Hurd, Town Councillor.
Thank you, Jane. This is a great opportunity to check if people know how to mute and unmute. Hint, hint.
Sorry about that, Chairman. Yeah, Jane Mills, Coatswold Councillor, Barnoldswick.
Thanks, Jane. David?
David Whip, Town Councillor.
Thank you. Mick, now I can see you're unmuted. The sort of general way we do it is you stay muted until you've put your hand up and you've been asked to speak.
No problem.
Yeah,
I'll mute
introduce
myself
yourself.
after.
Yes.
Mick Strickland, Barnoldswick Town Council.
Thank you. Mike?
Mike Whittingham, Barnoldswick Town Council.
That's great, thank you. Jodie?
Jodie Hoyle, Barnoldswick Town Council.
We've got Chris.
Chris Church, Barnoldswick Town Council.
Thanks, Chris. Glad to know we can hear you properly this time. We got John.
John Rose Parker, Town
Thank
Council.
you. Emma. Can we hear Emma?
Yeah, Emma West, Vice Chair.
Brilliant, thank you. And Lindsay.
Yeah, Lindsay Gaskell, Barnoldswick Town Council.
That's great, thank you. We can hear everyone. So now we'll do people that aren't here. Apologies for absence. I've received apologies from Mike Pearce, Marjorie Adams, and Ken Hartley, who I think are the only councillors not present. Yep. Item 2 then, declarations of interest. For those who don't know, declarations of interest are basically anything you sort of prejudicially financially involved with on the agenda. I don't think there's anything on tonight that would implicate anyone. There's very rarely is. But if there was something, this is where you would declare it. So that's just for Mick and Callum's benefit there. Item 3, open forum. Now, there hasn't been any questions in the live chat for the time being. We'll give people an opportunity. If you want to ask a question to the council on an item that isn't on the agenda, now is your opportunity to ask it in the live chat on YouTube. Joe, have you received any from email?
No, not at all.
Okay. I'll just give it 30 seconds. If there's any questions asked during the meeting after this, I'll come back to it at the end as well, just so we don't leave anyone behind. Okay. Item 4 then, minutes of the last meeting. Is anyone saying they're not an accurate record? Anyone want to pick up on anything?
Can I move them as a correct record?
You can indeed. Jane?
Thank you, Chairman. I better unmute myself this time. Yes, I'll second them. Thank you, Chairman.
Thanks, Jane. Is everyone in agreement there? Nod heads? Thumbs up? Anyone in disagreement? Speak now. That's great, thank you. Item 5, finance. To confirm approval of payments made by the town clerk to the council since the last meeting of the council, and to delegate consent for payments to be made prior to the next meeting of the council. So has anyone spotted any sort of weird payments that Joe's made? Any trips to the Bahamas? If not, Jane, are you indicating? Yeah.
Sorry, yes, I can move the payment approval. Thank you.
Thanks, Jane. Have we got a seconder for that? Thanks, Jodie. Nod if you're in favour, thumbs up. Yeah, I think that's everyone. Great, thank you.
Tom,
Yes,
I mean, delegate authority to make payments up to the next meeting.
I think, yeah, Jane's done that. Yes.
Oh, I thought she should move the payment, sorry.
It's all bundled together, so.
Right, that's fine, sorry.
Yep. Yeah. As long as everyone's clear. Item 6 then. This is where I'll hand over to Joe and David. We've got the estimated outturn of the previous financial year, this one we're in now. We've got the budget proposal for the next financial year that starts very soon. We'll take those two now. So Joe, have we got an estimated outturn, please?
So based on the revised budget, so obviously the initial one at the start of 2021, which revised due to COVID. So based on the item 6A, if everyone wants to have a look at it, which was the revised budget, we will have an underspend on the revised budget of £22,433 at year end, after we've taken into consideration all the projects and things that we've got on and other expenditure until the end of March. So the bank balance, which David had a minute ago. David, will you just flash that back up on the screen? Have I written it? So at the end of the year end, the bank account balance should be approximately £229,365. Now, some of that's ring fence for projects. There's some CCTV money in there. Some money for the skate park, some for Harbour Park. So we will have approximately 50% of this year's budget in the bank account at year end, and that's what the auditor likes to see. So we're on track, but we've made savings, but we are still on track as far as the bank account's concerned.
Great, thank you. Do we need to approve that estimated outturn here, or do we just note it?
You just have to note it.
Yeah.
It is basically.
I'll move that. We note that then. David, you got your hand up?
Well, I'll just second that. The thing that I wanted to comment about was clearly we have had and still are having a very unusual year. You know, this time last year, we set a budget. We expected that we were going to do as events program as we normally do, and lots of other things which obviously we haven't done. And in terms of the finances, the budget, such things as bands on the square effectively pay for themselves, you know, through the bar income. So we had, I think it was £50,000 in the budget last year as income from the Bots Bar. Similarly, we had expenditure bands on the square. So that sort of, it's net nil. There's, you know, the two, the income, the expenditure balance. The Civic Hall is another one where the expenditure has been, the income has been much less than we anticipated. We've done some things. We were intending setting on a second person in the office to undertake a range of duties. We haven't done that. So we've reacted to the situation and ended up with a projected underspend of just over £22,000. Of course, a lot of the activity of the Town Council has carried on, and the biggest expenditure during, proposed during the current year is the Town Council's contribution to works on the town square and the immediate area, which in the budget we had 75,000. We agreed a further 2,000 a few years ago, which we need to put into it as well. And during this last year, we had a grant returned, which were added into it. So that's a big lump of money, which we will be paying out before year end. And then there's quite a lot of smaller projects that have carried on, and to be honest, to a large extent, they've been the main activity that's actually gone on during various lockdowns and restrictions and the like. So the outturn does reflect that reduced expenditure, and when we get into the rest of this process, we'll explain how we intend utilising that in order to retain a balanced budget and have a sensible precept.
Thank you for that, Councillor Whip. Right, so it's been moved and seconded that we note this. Anyone just nod, put a thumbs up. If you want to speak on this, just put your hand up now. Oh, okay. B then, the budget proposal. So Joe, David, do you want to take this?
I'm not bothered whichever. Does my a lag on it?
Sorry, say again.
Does my Zoom look like it's got a lag on it? Like my internet's not any good. I've moved rooms.
It's just it's a bit laggy, I guess.
Yeah.
It's fine.
Don't worry about it. It's not too noticeable.
Budget proposal 6, item 6B. What we're proposing is expenditure of £324,100. Now, we've made a significant reduction to the events budget to take into consideration that it's unlikely that any events will take place before, say, I don't know, October, November this year. It's a proviso figure. If we don't use it, we'd knock it off next year's budget. So that's gone from, I think it was 58 last year, down to 20. Most other items have stayed roughly the same. Obviously, the amount that we had accounted for last year for town square improvements has come out of this year's budget, so that's quite a big thing. And like I said, on the whole, most things have stayed very, very similar, because most things that we've got on here do continue. Just 1 minute, my child's being really, really noisy. Bex, will you just be quiet? I'm sorry, she's washing up. Don't faint. Income-wise, we've taken a fair hit, like David said before. Although the events budget's normally higher and we have the amount in for the Bots Bar, we also having in there, £52,000 of income from the bar. So that's coming out of the income figure. The Civic Hall, I've made a more conservative figure for rental income, because I can't see it getting back to normal for quite a while. For example, this month's rental income is about £500, and normally it's over £2,000. So that makes a fair chunk in our overall income. Everything else I've left roughly the same. So with taking into consideration the conservative income that we think we're going to get, that would leave a deficit, an amount to be funded of 292,100. So Town Council need to decide how much are you happy to take out of savings, bearing in mind we did make just a short of the 22,500 saving on the revised budget to offset the council tax. Now, my recommendation would be to knock off this, the 22,500 we've saved by the end of last year, which would mean we'd have a £10,000 reduction in precept overall, which will be a 2.2% decrease for council tax, Barnoldswick Town Council element of the council tax. Thoughts?
David, you've raised your hand.
Yeah, I've just put the proposal on the screen. I don't have the budget with the lines without going into going onto the website and digging it up off there. So apologies for that. But essentially, the proposal I put up on screen does reflect what Joe's just been saying. So the draft budget is the document that we've got on hard copy, item 6B, and then the page that says precept. The budget, if it's agreed, is at least to a requirement of 324,100, and the items there are how it would be funded. So we've got income from the Civic Hall of 20,000. Market, we've got 5,000 in there. Now, it depends if the market resumes or when it resumes, but we've got expenditure to balance that in the expenditure. Clearly, if we don't have a market, we don't have any expenditure. Well, we have a minimal amount of expenditure, but we don't have any income, so that nets itself off. We put in a reduced amount of income from use of parks. Allotments, we're proposing that the allotment rents remain the same as last year. And then we're proposing that the use of reserves is set at 22,500, which is equivalent to the estimated underspend at the year end. So we're neither better nor worse off than we thought we would be, if things had been different during this financial year. And that leads to the precept of 269,600, which is, as Joe said, £10,000 less than the figure that we precepted last year. And the precept is in effect the town council share of the council tax, and people will have a view about it going down, which generally is probably a positive thing, although the reasons that it's going down is not positive at all, because we just haven't been doing the stuff that we would wish to be doing. Now, I don't want to get people to get carried away, because the share of the council tax that is the responsibility of the town council is only like 4.5 pence in the pound. So it's not a big sum of money in the grand scheme of things. And you've got the county council that take 69p in the pound, which, whatever they do is dwarfs the changes in anybody else's precept. So, Chairman, I would move the resolutions as set out there. Allotments, rents staying the same, approving the draft budget that Joe circulated with the agenda, and it is on the website, and agreeing to take that £22,500 out of reserves. Of course, this is just a snapshot. It's the financial position as we see it at the present time. If during the course of the year we are, for instance, able to hold Band on the Square, then because it's the income and the expenditure more or less balance, that would be a zero-sum exercise as far as the budget's concerned. So we could set that up at relatively short notice, given all the other sort of factors around it, if things change to such an extent that we feel it would be safe and responsible to put it on. At the moment, clearly, we don't think that that's going to be the case. And together with other events, we might get to be able to do some towards the end of the year. the money in the budget may cover expenditure for events that we planned for 2022 rather than 2021. So I move that. We are going to be doing lots of improvements in parks and things like that, but it's not the sort of activity or the level of activity that I would like, because you know, I think the town council is quite dynamic, wants to get things done, and that's generally what we're doing. And it's, in a sense, at the moment we've got enforced idleness, which certainly doesn't suit me, but there you go, we are where we are, we can't do anything about that. If it's okay with people, I'll take the screen down, but if anybody wants me to put it back up again, just shout.
Okay, so Councillor Whip has moved this proposed budget. Jane, you've got your hand up. Are you seconding that?
Thank you, Chairman. Yes, I am. I think it's a sensible budget proposal with what we've got to face this coming year. So I'll be happy to second that. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Mills. Would anyone else like to come in? You can either wave or raise your hand on the Zoom function.
I only have one thing about the budget, which we spoke about last night. For what it is for now, it can stay, but we need to discuss it further later on.
Thank you, Councillor Whittingham, that's fine. Okay, I think just, oh, David?
Well, Chairman, Mike's alluded to a discussion that we had outside the meeting with regard to physical meetings, and the £600 in the budget for the hire of the Raynal Centre. I think it'd be remiss to, you know, sort of like refer to it but not explain what it's about. So currently we don't really have, well, currently we have meetings online, so we don't have any physical meetings, but prior to that we didn't really have meetings at the Civic Hall. The main town council meetings were up at the Raynal Centre, and the key issue there to me is that the Raynal Centre is fully accessible for people who are disabled, perhaps in mobility scooters, wheelchairs and the like. And unfortunately, the Civic Hall isn't. That's a range of different issues. And in our informal discussions last night, we said, well, we'd look at whether we could upgrade the Civic Hall so that the access was improved. I've been having to think about that today, and there are three principal issues. There's a lift which doesn't allow mobility scooters to exit to the main room level because they can't physically, the door opens a different way, you can't turn around. There's a ramp at the side of the building which is too steep for Disability Discrimination Act. I mean, that was put in before DDA came in. So the slope is too great. So it's deficient in that. And I just don't know whether it would be possible to do that. And then the third thing is that the disabled toilet is at a particular level. So, oh no, there's another thing as well, actually. The disabled toilet is at a particular level, so you've got your difficulties of accessing that. And then the fourth thing is that the side door at the top of the ramp, it isn't a door that is normally in use. So whereas up at the Raynham Centre, you know, the doors are accessible and open automatically for people in wheelchairs. That's not the case at the Civic Hall. So it won't be straightforward for us to make the Civic Hall DDA compliant. And I mean, we did look at some of these issues a while ago. I think you're talking at least into the scores of thousands of pounds, and perhaps, you know, into six-figure sums in order to be able to achieve that compliance. So what Mike Whittingham is saying is, well, you know, we shouldn't pay money to the Raynham Centre for use of that building. My point of view would be, well, if we ever do our physical meetings, actually the most cost-effective way of doing it is probably to hire somebody else's building that is compliant, rather than spending perhaps, and I'm plucking this figure out of the air to some extent, you know, £100,000 plus making our building compliant. But I do think as a matter of principle that our meetings ought to be accessible to as many people as possible, and we shouldn't put barriers in the way of people who are require mobility aids in order for them to get in and out of buildings.
Thank you, Councillor Whip. Right. I think given that this is a budget, I think we should do a name vote instead of waving. So I'll just go through everyone one by one, and you can say, you know, whatever you want for whatever you want for against, just to make it clear. So first on mine is me, so I'm for this budget proposal. Next I've got Callum. Thumbs up. All right, that works.
Yeah,
too.
for it.
Thank you, Chris. If you can just say it out loud and then.
Yes, for it.
Thank you. Got David.
For.
Thank you. Everyone's going out of order now on my thing. Geordie.
For.
Jane.
For.
Thank you. Emma.
For.
John.
For.
Lindsay.
7, 4.
Thank you. Got Mick.
For.
Thank you. And last but not least, Mike.
For.
Have I missed anyone? Nope. That's great. Thank you. That's passed unanimously. Next on the agenda is to consider allotment rents for 2021-2022.
And sorry, I did move that as part of the budget proposals.
It's fair enough. Yeah. And did you move setting the precept as well, all at once?
Yeah, sorry, I short-circuited it a bit.
You're okay. Just threw me off a bit there. Item 7 then, hanging basket and grass cutting contract. Chairman of GP, who do you want to come in on this one?
Yes, thank you, Chairman. We have, we've had contracts with 2 suppliers, or 1 supplier and 1 contractor, for the provision of hanging baskets. And the watering and of those hanging baskets, and then the some roadside grass cutting. And we need to consider whether we want to put these jobs out to tender, or continue with the current providers. The hanging baskets are provided by Gladstone Gardens, and the Town Council has taken the view that they do an absolutely excellent job. We get good value for money, and has previously resolved to set aside the appropriate financial regulations and award the contract to the people who've done it at Gladstone Gardens, who have done it previously. Given the absolutely splendid job that they did last year, I would suggest that we would wish to do that, subject to the cost being in line with previous amounts. And then secondly, in terms of watering of the hanging baskets, we have a local contractor who carries that out. Again, does a very good job. I think it still provides value for money. There's been slightly more work put into that contract. The cost has increased. I'm not aware if the contractor wants to increase costs for this next year. I'm trying to work out. Jo's nodding or shaking her head. So again, given the nature of the contract, we might wish to extend it for a further year. The grass cutting, there's probably more opportunity there for other contractors to do it. It's much more conventional. The watering, it's a bit, sort of like it's, sort of early morning, late at night, and sort of 2 and 3 times a week, depending on the weather. So it's not everybody's cup of tea to do that, and we only had a single provider willing to price for it last time around. Grass cutting, it may be that you want to test the market with that one, but I would certainly suggest for watering and for the providing the hanging baskets, that subject to the prices being in line with previous years, that we set aside the standing orders and re-engage the current contractors.
Thank you, Councillor Whip. Jane, was that a hand up then?
Thank you, Chairman. Yes, just thinking about these items. I think I agree with Councillor David Whip regarding the hanging baskets. They do a wonderful job, and the watering too. Thinking about the grass cutting, I think we've had a really good job done with the current contractors for that. From memory, I think there was someone contracted out. I don't know whether it was a year or 2 ago, and the work wasn't particularly good from comments that we're seeing and what we saw ourselves. So we do know that they do a good job, and the price is very good, to be fair. I'm happy to go along with what we've got, because we know we get a good job. But if other people are wanting to test the market, we can certainly do that. But I'm happy to go the way things are. Thank you.
Sorry, Chairman, just to come back in, I think there's a justification in terms of the provision of the hanging baskets because of the quality of the job that we get, and because of the specialist nature of the watering and the antisocial hours and all of that. There's a justification there to set standing orders to one side. I'm less convinced about the grass cutting, and I do know that the auditors would wish for us to sort of seek that we get value for money, and the auditors could be critical if we didn't test the market from time to time with that. So that's why I'm leaving that one open as to what people think might be best to do.
Thank you. Right, is anyone else wanted to come in on this? So I think, David, you proposed waiving standing orders for the hanging baskets and the watering, and putting the grass cutting out to tender.
I wasn't actually saying anything on the. I was just saying, the town council may wish to put the grass cutting out to tender, which, I mean, I think on balance that's what I would do, and see, if there's anybody willing to do it, and find out, if we are in line with the current market.
Right.
So I'll move that then.
Okay. And Jane, were you seconding that?
Yeah, I'm fine with that. Thank you, Chairman.
Yeah. Anyone have any comments? Any disagreements with that way forward? Everyone happy with that way forward? Yeah, nods all around. Callum, you nodding? Yeah, good, thank you. Right. Item 8 then, to consider summer planting. David, I think this is yours again.
Chairman, sorry, yes, I guess it is. Chairman, I mean, most people will be aware the town council, as well as paying for the hanging baskets, pay for both summer and some winter bedding schemes around the town. Last year, because of COVID-19 and the lockdown, we reined in a bit, and I mean, incidentally, that's one of the savings that is part of the underspend that we've got coming on. Next year, I'm aware the Bloom Group are keen to have a special display in what we call the Forester's Bed, the semicircular bed at the junction of Skipton Road with Fernley Avenue, and that is a scheme yet to be determined, but expressing thanks to everyone, both health workers, care workers, people who have, kept the shops open, kept the local economy going during the pandemic. And this spring and summer might be a bit premature, but the Bloom Group are quite keen to have a planting scheme in place there, rather than leave it with the winter bedding, which we did last year to good effect. So that's the first one. And then, Chairman, we've got the regular planting schemes for Bill and Ben, for the 2 tree pits on Fernley Avenue. And last year, we also got the concrete rings planted up on Skipton Road, but we were fortunate in it being able to move some pendle planting from elsewhere in the town down to there, so it didn't cost us anything. But Chairman, those are the sorts of schemes that we need to approve, and to agree that we should take those forward. Generally, the plants are bought in, and some of them planted by the providers. Others, the plants are bought in and the Bloom Group plant them, but it's a bit of mix and match on that lot. So I'd like to propose that we do agree to go ahead with summer planting. We authorise Joe to, in consultation with the Bloom Group, to come up with specific proposals and get the necessary plants ordered, so that we're well in hand with that, rather than chasing his tails or wondering what to do when it gets too late.
Thank you. Do we have a seconder for that?
I'll second that.
I'll
Or Emma?
second. Oh, Emma, yeah, whoever.
You can third it if you want. Yeah, Lindsay, do you want to come in with your hand up?
Yeah, we're just going to say that I think they do a wonderful job at Bloom. So can we pass on our thank you to those again? Yeah, Gladstone Gardens do come up with some lovely flowers that we brighten up the town. So I'm just sort of wanting to relay that. Thank you.
Thanks, Lindsay. Yep. Is everyone happy with that proposal then? Anyone disagreeing? You can unmute and shout no now if you want to. Nope. That's great. Thank you. Item 9 then, skate park survey results and next steps. So I put up some posters in the skate park area, inviting the users of the skate park to fill out a survey. I mean, I'm going to leave it running, but I just wanted to share sort of a general overview of the stats. I haven't run sort of a full sort of breakdown yet, but just to give an idea, the survey respondents, pretty amazingly, were half male and half female. Pretty much, it's exactly 50-50, which is uncanny, but there you go. Let's see. So the average sort of user of the skate park uses it 1 to 5 hours per week. Sort of 50% of the responders said that. The sort of majority of people use either a skateboard or a scooter on the skate park. To a lesser extent, there's BMX users, mountain bike users, and longboards as well. Let's see. The favourite ramps that people tend to use is the half pipe and the fun box flat, which is that it's sort of like that and then flat on the top. Oh, so like a square with 2 triangles on either side. That one. That's me putting up the posters there. So by far the favourite. Thank you for that, David. The favourite ramp that people use are the half pipes. So a question that came up when we had our initial meeting with the skate park users was the surface. There was comments there. The surface was sort of, it was poor. It degraded over time. I think one person said it was like a cheese grater when you fell off your board, sort of mincing up your arm. So I asked, do people think the surface needs replacing? Just under 60% of the respondents says yes, it does. I asked if people thought the variety of ramps that we do have is sufficient, whether they want more variety, whether they're happy, whether they want less variety and more of the same, so just sort of half pipes everywhere, something like that. 83% of the respondents said they would prefer more variety, so more variations and more different styles of ramps. And then 10% said they're happy, and the other sort of odd percentages were with the other things. 93% of the respondents said they would prefer the skate park to be rearranged. So at the moment, it's a pretty benign layout. There's no sort of long path you can follow, or they call it floor. So the only sort of path that they have is you got the piano, which is that sort of long straight ramp that goes down. You got the fun box, and then the quarter pipe. So 93% said they would prefer it to be more rearranged, have a longer sort of floor. I asked do people like the material that's used? So at the moment, they're the sort of skate-like ramps, which is it's a type of wood, but it's sort of specialised for skating. It's kind of a hot topic. If some people have seen the discussions on Facebook, there's a lot of people calling for concrete. That's definitely shown here. 80% of the people said they would prefer concrete ramps. But that isn't the whole picture. There's 40% that said they would like wooden or skate light, and there's a couple of people as well that said they want steel ramps. I mean that sort of discussion, I think, and I'll come on to this later. We're setting up a skate park committee group, and that I think really needs to be ironed out, because there's pros and cons to both, and within the users there's a lot of discussion and arguments about it. Let's see. When we had our initial discussion with the skate park users, we brought up the issue of cars, because on football days or Sundays, there's a huge amount of cars that park on the skate park, blocking the ramps. And blocking access to those facilities for the users. I mean, I put a questionnaire, do cars cause an issue for you? And sort of 50% said yes. I think the 50% no, it was kind of a bad question. I should have had it as a text response. But after that initial meeting, me and David installed some benches, you might have seen them, along the line on the edge of the skate park. And those were put in not just for seating, but to stop the access of cars onto the area. We do have yet to put a bollard in the larger space, because we did need to retain access for vehicles. There's bin collection and hedge trimming, and also the fun fair uses that space sometimes, obviously not this past year. But cars were obviously a huge problem for the skaters and caused a lot of friction there, but hopefully that will resolve that. I think a discussion for another time is when I went to have a look on a match day, all of these cars were parked on the skate park, and the overflow car park adjacent to the football pitches had one car in it, just one car. I mean, it is overgrown with grass. I think we can look at doing something with that at a later date, but I'll leave it there for now. That's bench installation, thank you. That's a cat. The next thing I asked, there's an issue of the rocks. When the skate park was first installed, sort of trick BMXing was very popular at the time. People wanted these giant boulders to jump up onto on the BMXs. I asked, do people want them removed? Only 50% of the respondents says yes. And there's just about 30% said no. So obviously I think there is some reluctance from people to take them away. The idea of removing them was we'd have another space for a half pipe, which is, again, everyone's favourite, as we saw earlier on in the responses. There's another 14% said maybe. I asked if people had any other feedback they feel is important. People brought up vandalism, which we know we've got problems with. We've got the cars, as you mentioned again, dealing of illicit substances, which is something that I and other Pendle Council's colleagues bring up at every area committee meeting, of the dealing of substances in the Victory Park car park next to the pavilion. Let's see. Antisocial behaviour, bigger half pipe, large jump box, there's a lot of good responses with critiques and ideas there. So up on the screen now, we've got the state of the half pipe, which is currently fenced off. This was sort of the major vandalism that people were referring to in their survey responses. Over the past sort of few months, we've been doing an R in, should we remove it, get it fixed? We've had some approaches to get it fixed. We got £5,000 allocated from the area committee for use on the skate park, which was kind of earmarked to get fixed or just get fund towards a replacement. £5,000 would not fund outright a replacement. It's on the sort of order of 20,000, 25,000 for a new one. But I asked what people would like to see happen to the damaged half pipe. And just under 60% said they would prefer it to be taken away now and seen with a replacement, a new one, using that £5,000 from the area committee to fund that new one in the hope that it would come sooner or something like that. There was only 10% of the respondents that said they would like to see it fixed. I mean, whether the council is minded the same way on fixing it, I don't know. I mean, there's some credit to the idea. If we're getting lottery funding, that £5,000 doesn't necessarily need to go towards it for a replacement. But yeah, there's the opinion that the wooden ramps, they're slippery when wet. The old screw holes in the panels, after rain, when the bikes go over them, it pushes water out from the structure, and even when it's dry initially, all that water seeping out makes it wet again and slippery. I asked sort of if you do want it replaced, what sort of replacement would you want? The vast majority, 48%, said something along the lines of a wider half pipe of the same size with variations. So different types of finishes on the top. I don't really know the ins and outs, but the majority there said wider with variations. Another 17%, the same type, but just wider, no fancy bits and bats with a spine in the middle or anything like that. Let's see. I think after that, that was pretty much all the responses. I asked another few questions that aren't really relevant to this meeting. But yeah.
Just out how you said about the replacement of the half pipe, the cost is £31,277 plus VAT.
That's for the like.
Yeah, I think it's slightly wider, isn't it?
Oh yeah, the new one
wide.
Is wider, yeah. And that was because the style of ramp that there now isn't within regulations because of the drop off on the side. Right, I did receive a question on this item beforehand. It's in sort of two parts. It's from a member of the skate park committee Facebook Messenger group that I'm on. So one, is it a definite that we are able to build and improve on the existing site? And two, what is the process? Do we need to collate quotes from companies and put together a business plan to get the ball rolling, or do we need permission first? If we want to move forward with it, we will need definitive answers, otherwise we're risking not moving anywhere very fast. And with regards to the funding, how long is this secured for? I think they're referring to the area committee £5,000. So with that mouthful, I think I'll open it up to discussion. Anyone any thoughts? So I think we need to sort of decide a way forward now. Lindsay, is that an old hand? You are muted. I'll bring Jane in.
Thank you, Chairman. Just going back to the questionnaire, trying to find the 80% responded that they prefer concrete. Do we have a price for a concrete one? I would imagine it's probably astronomical.
There was one built in Skipton recently. Actually, I've got the figure for that. Let me just look it up. The one at Skipton cost £250,000. For a similar size with a skate light or a metal one, you're probably looking at maybe 125,000. So those are the sort of scales of order of magnitude.
Sorry, Chairman, I didn't quite catch that second bit. 125,000 for what?
The one at Skipton, the concrete one at Skipton, cost £250,000 thereabouts.
Yeah.
And we figure plucked out of the air for a one with the same material we're using now. It's around about 125,000, so about half the cost. I think it's worth noting that we wouldn't fund it completely out of the town council's pockets. This is something we'd apply funding for. So any of these figures is not coming out of the precept. But yeah, is that answer your question, Jen?
Yeah, pretty much. I mean, it sounds like they're not happy with the laminate that we have at the moment. It's wet, it's slippy.
I think regardless, if you don't have a roof over, anything is going to get slippy, whether it's metal or wood or even concrete. But
so concrete's going to be slippy, do you think? I really
don't
know.
I'm not a skater.
I mean, I'd be happy to go with a new wider half pipe if we could sort that. But if the ultimate aim is to go for a concrete one, is it worth seeing if there's any funding to sort that? Because 80% prefer it. But I don't know how other people feel about that. Thank you.
Thanks, Jen. I've got Mike's hand up is next.
Thanks, Chairman. Pretty much what Jane was just saying there. I think the skate park committee should make some decisions and decide exactly what they want first. Then we can maybe look at how much that's going to cost. If the price is obviously too high and we can't get funding, then we don't really have much choice but to replace the half pipe that's there, the damaged one, and make do until we can get funding to do it, to have something new.
Thanks, Mike. I've got David, then Geordie, then Chris. David?
Thanks, Chair. When we created the wheel park in the first place, and I've told this story before, but I'll repeat it. It was 20 years ago, and we had a meeting. Councillor Margaret Bell and myself organised an open meeting which was held in the Barnoldswick town function room, and Margaret and myself were working on a major upgrade to the park, and we wanted people to come with their ideas about what they wanted to do. And the largest group that turned up, and I recall there were probably 40 or so youngsters, and they said, well, what we want is a wheel park. Now, the councillors of the day recognised that we weren't going to get that major improvement to the park for many years. And I mean, eventually it probably took us, it probably took us 8 or 10 years before we got everything done that was eventually agreed. So we fast-tracked the wheel park provision, and we set up a wheelie park group. We did fundraising. We applied for grants. We set up the wheel park group as an arm's length independent organisation associated with the town council and Pendle Council, but not part of it. And eventually we raised, memory tells me, £66,000 or thereabouts. And little by little, we put the wheel park together. So we cleared away the old crazy golf course. We put in it is actually a specialist bitmap service. It isn't, bog standard bitmap, which is disliked, but nevertheless, it did cost quite a bit more than your standard stuff. We put in the lighting, and then we bought the ramps as and when we could afford them. So, they were added as the job went on. And I think the wheel park is extremely well used, despite the criticism of the ramps. In normal circumstances, you'd go down and there'd be loads of kids using it, which, to my mind, people are voting with their feet or the wheels, and they're making use of the facility. So I think it's well used, well loved, and something that we want to, maintain and keep in use. Now, my thinking on it is, sort of like we did it before with an arm's length group, and that's the way to go. They can apply for funding that we as a town council might not be able to apply for funding, but at the same time, the area does belong to the town council. We remain responsible for it, so we've got to ensure that everything that's done is to a satisfactory standard, to ensure we're not negligent and we're not open to being sued, essentially. I think the particular issue that we've got right now is the ramp that is fenced off, and we saw pictures of the damage inside there. Now, ideally, you'd get rid of it, you get a fresh ramp, and it'd all be super duper. But in reality, knowing how long timescales are in terms of getting funded together, it's not straightforward. So if at the cost of a few £1,000, we could put that into usable order, make it serviceable, even if it's only going to last for a couple of years' time, I think that's worth doing. And I'm not sure whether there'd be agreement on the town council, never mind with the wider skating community on that. But a lot of the people who are using the skate park are relatively young. A year in their life is a significant proportion of their lifetimes, so it's a long time. And that comes back to where I started, when 20 years ago, we didn't want to wait 10 years because those kids have been parents themselves, perhaps, by the time that the skate park came into reality. And by doing it, by fast tracking it and doing it, within a few short years, at least the kids that were campaigning for it then got some use out of it before they progressed and went on to other things. So, I think all power to your elbow, crack on with getting that committee going, doing the fundraising, discussing exactly what people want to do. And there'll be tensions because one set of people want to do one thing and a different set of people want to do another. But, there'll have to be a consensus about that. And, for the town council to help us as best we can in supporting the group in that effort, and supporting fundraising and finding funding ourselves to put into whatever the outcome is. I'm generally ambitious, and certainly when we set out to improve the park, we were very ambitious, and ultimately, I'm going back a dozen years now, we invested perhaps £2 million in park improvements, and that's a huge sum of money. More difficult to realise that level of funding now, and to realise £200,000, as we know from doing the work on the town square, that took us a lot of effort, and so is it realistic to look at investing six-figure sums? It might be, if we can get granted and match funding and the like from elsewhere. It may well be possible to do a really good job and have a super duper skate park. But I think we need to feel as way, and if it's not possible to achieve that, then we compromise and we do stuff so that the kids of today aren't waiting forever to see improvements, which they might be too old by the time that they actually come about.
Thank you, David. Geordie, I think you indicated next.
Yeah, basically agreeing with what David's just said about what's there maintained for the next couple of years. But also, I would thoroughly encourage looking into getting funding for a concrete one, because that will be there for a lot more years than this would have been, the one that we have now. I think it's a better investment in the future of the skate park. I know, well, not we as a family, but my stepson uses the skate park, but we take him to Skipton to use theirs. Obviously not at the moment, but that's what we've been doing, because it's better because it's concrete and it is slippy when it's wet.
I think there's no getting around the slippy issue, is there really?
As kids get older, like we've got with my stepson, it's an opportunity for them to go on their own if there's one on the doorstep, rather than having to wait and pile the entire family in the car and us all standing freezing cold watching him skate around on a bit of concrete. I think in the long term, it will last longer than any wooden ramp or metal ramp ever would anyway.
Right. Chris and then Lindsay.
Thank you. Yeah, largely covered by what Jodie said there. I just wanted to raise the matter of life expectancy in comparison with the cost, and also the fact, because we've had vandalism in the past, we would have to be very careful not to repeat the potential of the same again, and make sure it's something more vandal proof as well as long lasting. So yes, I'm with Jodie on the concrete, definitely, and also with David that we should get something done in the short term for those people who are growing older.
Thanks, Chris. Lindsay?
I believe over 20 years ago, the concrete that they used then broke up quite quickly. So even if we had got a concrete one 20 years ago, not the ones that we've got now, they would have been going as well. But I want to know, how would we be able to put a concrete one where the wheel park is now? What's underneath that? Because we'd have to dig down, things like that. But I am in agreement that I think that they should have something now to play on, and then possibly look at larger funding to fund something more substantial, because I'm sure things have moved on. But that's what I want to know.
Okay. I mean, I'm in discussion with skate park users who want to set up a group, want to find funding and make decisions by themselves for the new for new ramps or a new skate park, which I think is their dream. For as a way forward, do we say to them, you have our blessing, sort of ask the funding streams that are available, come up with some plans, send them over to us, we can look them over. David, you've put your hand up.
Well, originally it was prompted by Lindsay's question. I mean, I can't see any physical reason why, there couldn't be concrete installation in the current site. There is the main sewer, but that's off the line of the wheel park itself. It's adjacent to, but not underneath it, and the services that there are, the electric around the periphery. So, there's no reason why you couldn't do it, apart from cost. In terms of the question that you've just asked, I think if any voluntary group needs to be hand in glove with the town council, because it will be the town council that is responsible, and so anything that is done, we need to be fully plugged into the discussions and the decisions, and the sort of model that we had before is what I would very strongly recommend, which is members of the town council's councillors being part of the group that's doing the discussions. Given issues that could arise, I would strongly encourage trying to persuade Joe to be a treasurer of such a group, so that any funds that are raised, are under the town council umbrella, and aren't used for any other purposes. But it wouldn't have to be Joe necessarily, but I'm just saying, it needs to have that sort of regime.
I think, are people well aware of the situation that occurred?
I don't think we need to go into it.
Yeah. But there is adequate reasoning for wanting something like that. Right. So way forward, it says on the agenda, we agree next steps. Do we need any sort of resolution, or are we just happy with that sort of meandered sort of approach that we've discussed already? Jen.
Thank you, Chairman. I think we really should have a resolution. They've asked a question, 2 questions. We need to form a group with town council members on it, with, as David's talked about, having a responsible person for the money, to oversee the money. And we kind of need to know what's going on and to sign it off at the end of the day. So, I mean, to encompass everything that we've said, but I think we'd probably do need a resolution on that.
Okay. I think first we're so we're noting the interim outcome of the survey, as David says in the chat. Agree to. Do you want to just move that, David, if you're going to type it all out? Mike, I'll let you come in. You've got your hand up.
Yeah, I think the resolution is pretty much that we look to getting the current broken ramp fixed. We give the skate park committee, along with a member of the town council, permission to seek out the funding and get quotes if they like. I think we need to note that whatever we have installed needs to comply with I think it's BSEN 14974, which is the British standards for the skate park manufacture. It deals with all the safety requirements and test methods for skate parks as well. So I pretty much think that yes, get the one that we've got there repaired for an interim period. Get the skate park committee to seek out the funding for a replacement, whatever they want, and then we'll take it from there.
Okay. David?
Just to agree with what Mike's proposed and suggest a couple of extra bits. I think the town council should agree to support the independent group. That might be administrative support. Certainly have representatives of the town council, on that committee. And Chairman, you've been, sort of working with people to set things up. So, you're the first person in the line for that, but others as well. I think the town council in itself should investigate funding, because there might be some funding opportunities that are open to the town council in addition to, and I think that's it really. I think we've covered the bases.
Yep. Okay, so we got Councillor Whittingham's proposal there. David seconded it pretty much. Is everyone okay with that way forward?
Are you happy with one representative? Are you happy with just one representative?
No, I think we should have more than one on balance.
Who is interested and willing?
Callum's put his thumbs up. Are you interested in?
And Mike?
Yeah, I'll stick my name down for it.
Yeah. Why not?
Jodie as well?
Jodie, there's signal there that she wants to.
Okay, so me, Callum, Jodie, Mike. Mick, you've got your hand up.
Yeah, happy to support it and help out the committee. Just a quick one. I'm just wondering if there's any mileage in speaking to Skipton to see what sort of journey they took. See if they'd secured any fundings by any other streams that we've maybe not thought of, etc.
Yeah.
Does
Yeah, that's great.
anyone know if it was installed by the council or is there any signage up?
I'm not sure who runs the parks in Skipton.
I'm going to say normally I could have found out because I cut a few at councillors' airs.
I can ask because I am employed by Skipton.
Road trip I can take.
I do think it was done by Friends of Everall Park, possibly. Something to do with that.
Thank you.
Right.
Yes, I think.
As well.
Excellent, thank you.
Okay, Jane, is that an old hand?
It is. If I get a chance, I'll have a good bash at being on the group. I don't know how much.
Yeah, I mean,
time
anyone can just drop in on a meeting. I think sort of we're going to have the inaugural meeting of it soon. And I think sort of in official terms, we'll put it in the constitution that, we need so many members from the town council to be trustees or whatever. So, the people who've said would be in that official capacity, but there's nothing stopping any other member from joining at any time.
That's fine then.
Yeah?
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, so no one's disagreeing with that way forward. All happy? I think everyone shook their heads, didn't they? Yeah. That's great, thank you. Item 10 then, to consider Transdev bus services. I think either Mike or Jane, you or Jodie, you wanted to come in on this?
I'll let Jodie start with this one, I think.
Yeah, go ahead.
Right. Basically, there's been posts on Facebook since I went back to work in July due to the change of the bus times. Now, that was already planned before the lockdown in March. So I've complained to Transdev. I know at least 3 other people that have complained to Transdev, and they've basically said that it's not going to change, so don't bother. We've then had a situation where once the kids went back to school in September, the bus times changed again. So the 7:53 bus would have got someone working in Skipton who started work at 9 o'clock to Skipton for 8:25. That bus is full. So they're leaving people stood by the side of the road. These are people who were trying to get to work and things like that. The next bus is then at 8:52, which doesn't get into Skipton until 9:05. So anybody starting work at 9 o'clock can't actually get to Skipton for 9 o'clock. If you're after the main bus stop in Barlick and that bus is oversubscribed, they don't let you on the bus because of social distancing, which is understandable. There's also been situations when the 7:53 bus they've sent a single decker rather than a double decker. Now, I've spoken to a chap from Burnley and Pendle, well, Transdev. He says that the 7:53 bus isn't oversubscribed. I pointed out that it's usually full of school kids and college kids by the time it gets to Barlick. He's told me that's not the case, that they have a school bus for Ermisted's and the girls' school, which Mikey will fill you in after, and the kids should be using that. The fact is they're not using that bus, they're using the Whiz bus, which is supposed to be for people going to work, which means some of us, like me and a couple of other parents from Matthew's school, are having to get to work late. And I know 1 or 2 of them have had warnings off the bosses, which at this time, that's not acceptable that people are risking the jobs because the bus times aren't right. I've explained this to the gentleman I spoke to. It seems to have gone over his head. I said, all they really need to do is put an extra single decker in between those 2 buses. And he said, we don't need it, but we quite clearly do at the moment. Possibly in 6 months' time, that won't be the case. But at the moment, to service from Barnoldswick to Skipton, they need an extra bus in between those 2 buses. Now, they sent me the statistics, and some of them don't pan out anyway, because 1 or 2 of the buses I were on, and I know they were fuller than the statistics say. He's also, like I said, he said the school buses aren't oversubscribed. When I said to him about the college students getting on that bus as well, his reply was they work with the colleges in Burnley. Completely irrelevant to what I were actually discussing it with him. Where's my email? He's basically fluffed me off. That's the nicest way to put it. He didn't pick me at a good time. He rang me whilst I were at work and I had a queue of people. And oddly enough, I don't like to leave my customers waiting. There's also been issues with kids being left on the side of the road, which he says doesn't happen. Now, I know it does. I use those routes day in, day out and have done for the last 12 years. So I know people get left at the side of the road. I've seen it with my own eyes. It's basically, he's told me that the Whiz buses have been refurbished and repainted, so you can't see what the argument is. And they've got Wi-Fi. To be fair, I wouldn't care if they were sending a shed, as long as it got the people to work on time. There are people at risk of losing their jobs and things because Transdev don't seem to see the bigger picture as far as the timetables are concerned.
If I may just interject a little bit there, Jodie, with regards to the school buses.
Yeah, I know you know.
School buses are full. They sold out of the V44 that runs through Barnoldswick to Ermisted's and the Skipton Girls. They sold out of tickets before I managed to get my daughter one, and there was 3 or 4 other people that also got told they couldn't get tickets for the school bus. I had some conversation with Transdev. and they eventually moved some kids from Colne onto the V43, which runs through Earby, to make space on the V44 for these kids in Barnoldswick. But also the point that Jodie makes there is a good one. The kids that go to Skipton College don't use the V44 because to use the V44 costs £650 a year. Now the kids that go to college may only go twice a week. So instead of getting the school ticket for the school bus, they'll get a normal ticket and get on the whiz. With there being only one whiz that gets to Skipton before 9 o'clock, it pretty much gets filled up pretty quickly with school kids before it gets to Barnoldswick, and then people like Jodie and others are left at the bus stop because they can't get on the bus. It is Transdev's responsibility. They need to sort it. It's that simple, really.
I know I've been told that it's not their responsibility. I've told them basically the service they're providing is not fit for purpose. It's not getting people to work on time. And like you said, college students, if they're paying for their own bus tickets, they are going to take the cheaper option because they're not going every day. There's also Skipton Academy that doesn't have a bus service and is becoming more and more popular with people from Barnoldswick. Matthew's going. Sophie went there. It is becoming a bigger issue because people are wanting the kids to go to school more out of the area.
Sadly, a lot of it harks back to the Education Act. When the Education Act was changed, the provision for requiring the government and local authorities to put the transport in place to get children to school and back was removed. So Transdev currently run the school buses on their own accord. They're not contracted to anybody. They do it because they make money out of doing it, and that's the only reason there is a bus to Skipton. It's something that needs to be addressed within the Education Act for sure, because it's crazy that you've got kids that can't get to school in the morning because there's no place on a bus.
To be fair, it's crazy people can't get to work on time in the morning as well.
Jane?
Thank you, Chairman. So basically, this has been rattling on a while, really, sort of back in October 2020. Councillors were first made aware of the situation regarding the unreliability of the Transdev whiz bus from Burnley to Skipton and back. There was at that time a failure of buses to actually turn up at peak times. They were having breakdowns and issues, various things going on. People working in the hospitality sector in Skipton are finding it difficult to get back from work late at night. So we raised this issue with the West Craven Area Committee, who wrote to Transdev to find out the reasoning, you know, what's behind it. They did say they were having difficulties with breakdowns and things, and they didn't really answer the capacity. They just said they were complying with government guidelines, which you would understand that if you have to social distance on a single decker bus, then half of the people that were going to go on it couldn't get on it. So basically, West Craven Area Committee are writing back again to ask for a virtual meeting with Transdev to try and see what's behind the issue, see if there can be any resolution. And I think what we are looking at as a Barnoldswick Town Council is asking for representation at that virtual meeting to see what we can sort out. Thank you.
Is there anyone else wanting to come in on this? No.
Well,
David?
Chairman, seeing as how you're pressing, just that last bit, the area committee is seeking a meeting with Transdev to discuss these issues. I think the most sensible way forward is the councillors who are familiar with the problem are able to participate in that meeting and get the points across that you've been raising tonight. I have to say, given past dealings with Transdev, that Transdev are intransigent, you know, the prospect of getting any progress, we might need to look at other alternatives if we're going to get anywhere.
Thank you, Councillor Whip. Chris?
If there seems to be a big gulf between what we think, what we know is happening and what they say is happening, what can we do in the way of evidence gathering before we start meeting them? Have we got numbers of people who will testify to having problems about being late for work? Have we got anybody who has noticed and can count how many people are having problems? If these people are denying our numbers or denying in general the facts that we're putting to them, then we should be firming up the facts that we are putting so that they cannot come back to us.
Jodie, I think you indicated, and then Mike.
I know 3 people that have had similar experiences with having to be late for work. I know one that would probably stand up and say that he was left at the side of the road because of that. And the only other experiences I've had are personal experiences, but like I said, I've used that service as long as it's been running, and I use it 5 days a week. So I don't know how much hold that would have with me being a councillor. But as a member of the public, that is my experience.
Mike, and then Chris can come back in afterwards.
It's okay, I'll let Chris come in.
Thanks. Can we do anything through social media to invite anybody who's got evidence on this matter? Just for people to reply and say they've had a problem, just so that we've got a sheaf of names and numbers to put to them.
I've still got the messages and emails from when the school buses were full. So I've got all that. We can evidence that. We've even got the emails from Transdev confirming that the school buses are fully booked and there were no spaces left, and then confirmation back after I quite strongly worded email to them where they changed everything for us. So we've got that. We could always post on Facebook and get people's comments and see where we go from there.
It would be a thought just to see how many come back.
I think there'll be a few.
There we go.
Okay, so if Joe could ask on Facebook for comments from people, that'd be great. Yeah, I think we've got a way forward there. Has everyone discussed everything they want to on this agenda item?
Tom, can we ask to have a representative on that thing? Or can we resolve to do that on the West Craven Area Committee that's already ongoing?
Yeah.
Representatives.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah. I mean, there's Emma, who's our representative on there. But we can, yeah, Jen.
I mean, Jodie and Mike are
Yeah,
the people who.
I'm the representative, but I don't have personal issue
No,
or personal experience. Yeah, that's what I mean. I think Tom was suggesting that, you know, I'd be a representative on there, but I don't have the knowledge that Mike and Jodie do on this.
It'd be right for me and Jodie to stand up and take this one.
Yeah, that's great. Right, so pros and seconded somewhere in there. Everyone happy with that resolution? Jane, is that just an old hand?
Yeah, it is. Sorry, Chairman.
Right. Okay. It goes back to item 9 after item 10. I'll take this as item 11.
I've already been messaged by one eagle eye to tell me that I'm rubbish at maths.
That's great. Okay.
Mr. Whittingham, I will point out I got the school award for maths, so that just shows the standard of maths in 48-year-olds in Barnoldswick.
I think this is more
didn't say which school.
Aptitude for Microsoft Word more than maths, but there we go. Right, correspondence and items for information. Jo, have we got any?
No.
That's fine then.
That's like, I've run out 3 pens have run out in 10 minutes. Sorry.
Right, okay. That's the end of the agenda then. I'll thank everyone for coming, especially our new members. Councillors Callum Hurd and Councillors Mick. I'm sorry, I've forgotten your last name now. It's not on here. iPad. I thank anyone watching at home. I know we've had a few people. I think most of them are people from the skate park committee group. Christine, our toilet cleaners, commented in the chat. I think it's not really a question. Right, I'll thank everyone for coming. Wish you all a safe journey to the kitchen or the liquor room if you want. And good night. Thank you all for coming.
Thank you, Tom.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Thanks, Tom. Good night.